We're on the beach in front of the San Onofre nuclear power generating station, where approximately 1,600 metric tons of high-level nuclear waste is being stored right next to the Pacific Ocean. Many locals are extremely concerned about the precarious position of that waste right next to the sea. So we've come down to talk to people and learn a little bit more about what's going on here in San Onofre. This is the second installment of the Santa Cruz Waves story series.
My name's Sarah Brady. I'm from Encinitas, California, which is about 35 minutes from here. So I grew up really close to San Onofre. I learned how to surf here. I learned that they're in the process of decommissioning right now, and they're storing the nuclear waste here on the beach, pretty much right here next to the ocean. I don't want to see some crazy accident happen here where we end up contaminating the entire Pacific Ocean.
Many have the same concerns as Sarah and worry about the prospect of a disaster, so we decided to check out the decommissioning power plant firsthand. Decades ago, the Department of Energy was tasked with establishing a permanent repository for all of the waste produced at nuclear plants around the country. A number of locations have been proposed over the years, such as Yucca Mountain in Nevada, but funding was shut down due to local opposition. The fact is, nobody wants high-level radioactive waste in their backyard. So, with nowhere to permanently deposit the spent fuel, nuclear plants like this one have become the default storage sites. Those massive domes are the containment structures that house the steam generators and the reactor. Back in 2012, it was newly replaced steam generators malfunctioning that caused the plant to be shut down. When the plant was active, its generators would produce 1,170 megawatts of electricity and fed the power into the grid. All of that electricity required huge amounts of water to cool the system, which is why this nuclear plant was built right next to the Pacific.
So as you can see, we're built fairly close to the ocean here. In fact, at high tide, the ocean's right up against the seawall in front of us. One of the reasons why nuclear plants are built by the ocean is because they have to use water, ocean water, to cool the plant. Typically, nuclear plants, by and large, use most of their cooling water for actually the production of electricity. A very small amount of cooling water is used to cool, for example, the spent fuel pools.
The big push for the San Onofre plant now is to transfer the spent fuel from water cooling pools into a dry storage containment system, which is housed in a new massive concrete installation near the beach. The canisters are designed by a company called Holtec. Experts agree that the dry cask storage is safer than cooling pools of water, which could evaporate if all power was lost and yield a radioactive fire.
By the time the fuel leaves the spent fuel pools, it's already been put into an MPC, which is a dry cask. It's been welded. There's a shielded assembly around it, and then it's transported over on that Go-Hoffer vehicle that we saw earlier. And each fuel assembly weighs about 2,000 pounds, and that includes all of the metal that holds and contains the fuel.
How many canisters have been lowered down into the system thus far?
So as of today, we have 20 MPCs loaded into this facility, 53 more to go.
That leaves us with 1,600 tons of radioactive waste stored very close to the beach. And while the nuclear plant staff runs the operation with extreme security and robust safety protocols, countless community members worry about coastal erosion, sea level rise, vulnerability to terrorist attack, and proximity to large populations.
We just got into San Clemente, and we're about to attend a community outreach event hosted by Southern California Edison, which is the power company that owns the majority of the San Onofre power plant.
It is hard to understand how this actual, beginning to bury it in the beach here has been decided upon as the best method or the best decision to be made. 8.5 million people are within the 50-mile plume zone, meaning that all of these people are going to be at risk should any kind of major accident occur.
The ocean is now increasingly representing our drinking water because Carlsbad has Poseidon. We use that desalination plant to do reverse osmosis, which does not filter radioactive isotopes.
Please do not abandon San Onofre's radioactive waste on our beach in San Diego County, as it is us kids who will inherit this problem if you do not fix it right now.
The Department of Energy is probing the possibility of transporting spent nuclear fuel to interim storage at a Holtec waste facility in New Mexico or to Texas, which each have their own stock of complications. Just like San Clemente, New Mexico's communities don't want nuclear waste either.
New Mexicans do not and will not support commercial spent fuel storage at the Holtec site or elsewhere in the state.
Sarah Brady, who we met surfing on the beach, shared a third concept. moving the waste to higher ground away from the coast onto the adjacent Camp Pendleton Marine Base.
We need a third, less bad option, which I believe is moving the waste further east on Camp Pendleton, where it can be safely stored, monitored, and defended. One example of such a possible storage site would be the Mesa site. The Mesa is a piece of land across the I-5 freeway from the current storage site. I understand why Pendleton would not want this waste on their land, but it is already on their land and in the least defensible part of it.
The Marine Base, however, hasn't been licensed for spent fuel storage by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. But beyond that, Camp Pendleton doesn't want nuclear waste on their land either.
Our record is pretty clear. We'd like it off the base as quickly as possible, which I think is what everybody wants, is out of the area.
There's no clear path today. This fuel has to be moved at some point somewhere, or it's got to be maintained on site.
We're in downtown San Clemente at Surfrider Foundation's headquarters, and we're about to meet with their CEO and staff scientists to talk about nuclear waste that's stored right here on the coastline.
San Onofre nuclear power plant is this incredible industrialization of our coastline. It's been sitting there, for over 40 years. And now we're addressing the really complicated issue of how do you remove millions of pounds of highly radioactive waste out of a place which is one of the most heavily populated places on the state. I think the decision about the storage where it is over. It's being put in there. So I don't think that debating different canisters or different locations at this point is relevant anymore. Now we need to focus on the ultimate goal, which is getting this out of here.
Surfrider is opposed to the long-term storage of high-level radioactive waste on the coastline. And we are working at the federal level to get this waste moved to a consent-based, safe, and stable environment away from the coastline as soon as possible. We're really stuck at trying to figure out what is the best option. And the best option would have been rewinding 1968 and not putting a nuclear power plant on the coast when they had no plan for how they're going to handle this high-level radioactive waste. Is that viable? Unfortunately not. But it's what we have in front of us. We're stuck with this waste where it is until we can get the Department of Energy to do what they were tasked to do and handle this waste safely and find a permanent repository where it can sit and go through the necessary, radioactive lifespan in order for it to become stable again.
Good rule for future thinking is don't create something that's going to be toxic for 10,000 years.
We're in the Santa Cruz Mountains at the home of Daniel Hirsch, a nuclear policy expert who just retired from UC Santa Cruz, but he continues to be involved in the debate around San Onofre's spent nuclear fuel.
Radioactive waste is probably the most dangerous material on Earth. It's dangerous for 500,000 years. 1/1,000,000th of an ounce of inhaled will cause lung cancer. A couple kilograms in a bomb can take down a city, and it has a half-life of 24,000 years. The fundamental sin of our nuclear era is that we've produced vast quantities of this very dangerous material that's very long-lived without having the slightest idea how to dispose of it. That is the sin. We get 50 years of power, more or less, and future generations get 500,000 years of waste. And it raises serious questions about what kind of a species we really are. If radioactivity gets into the ocean, there's a process called biomagnification whereby the radioactivity concentrates as it works its way up the marine food chain. So when we dump radioactive waste into the ocean, we're dumping it into a living entity that we then harvest back when we eat the fish. It's all one environment. We dump in the ocean then dumps back into us. For the people who live in San Diego and in Orange County, they have the nuclear threat near them. The problem, of course, is that you don't solve that problem by pushing it onto someone else so it's near them. There is a safe form of nuclear power. You just need to have a long enough distance between it and you. And it's called the sun.
We didn't get to meet him in San Onofre, but we got to talk on the phone with Vice President and Chief Nuclear Officer for the plant, Tom Palisano, before press time.
We, Southern California Edison, are committed to safely store spent nuclear fuel until the Department of Energy removes it from the site, which is their responsibility under federal law. So they're located at an elevation, they're behind the seawall, they're at a distance from the ocean, And, we have analyzed worst case scenarios of the maximum probable water level and wave action and even a tsunami that would not inundate the facility, okay? So we've shown that the facility itself is protected where it is. Both systems could be submerged and they continue to operate. So I think we've tried to be very transparent with the public so they know what is here, how we're caring for it, and what is going on. We need a concerted effort to get the federal government to take action. By law today in this country, removing spent fuel from commercial nuclear sites and disposing of it is a federal government responsibility in the Department of Energy. That's the law of the land. And this problem is around the country because of lack of federal government action. And this has got to be solved by the federal government on a national level.
That leaves us at a beach, famous for its surf, with a view over the vast Pacific Ocean, and nearby millions of pounds of spent nuclear fuel. The Department of Energy is re-examining Nevada's Yucca Mountain as a possible permanent site, but it was nixed as an option in 2011 due to resistance from state officials and native tribes. Nuclear waste continues to accumulate all over the nation, and while it represents an immense source of energy, we might stop to consider, are the risks to this planet and our future worth it? And are there safer ways to generate the power we need? As we look into the future, it will be on us to make these important choices.